Chair Austin, the meeting is now live.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk. So I will begin by calling the meeting to order. So to begin, we'll do the land acknowledgement. I acknowledge the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Okay. So my next thing, given this is a virtual meeting, is roll call. I am, of course, here. I believe we're still missing Councillor Kent.
That is correct, Chair Austin.
Yes, and I, as discussed before we went live, I think she did send me regrets. I've got this vague recollection, but not 100% trusting myself here. Councillor Mancini is away. He did send regrets. Councillor White.
Good evening.
Good evening. You're here.
I am here.
Councillor Hinch.
Good evening.
Wonderful. Hello, Councillor Hinch. Councillor Cleary.
Good evening, everyone.
Hello, Councillor. Thank you. So that would, everyone's audio and video is working and we're all expected accounted for. Thank you. So the next thing I will do is I will actually turn this over to our clerk because we have to choose a chair for the next year.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Austin. So I'll now begin the election for chair of the Regional Centre Community Council by calling for nominations for the position of chair. Councillor Cleary.
I would like to nominate Councillor Austin if he's willing to serve again.
And I'll need a seconder, please.
Second.
And Councillor Austin, do you accept the nomination?
I do accept the nomination. Thank you, councillors.
Okay, so I will now, as I'm required by the administrative order, call a second and a third time for any further nominations for the position of chair. And for the third and final time, are there any further nominations for the position of chair? No? All right, so we have a successful nominee, Councillor Austin. And now I will ask for a mover and a seconder to approve the appointment of Councillor Austin as the chair of the Regional Centre Community Council. So Councillor Cleary and Councillor Hinch. And if I can now have a vote to approve that motion.
Question.
All right, and it's approved. So I will now declare Councillor Austin chair of the Regional Centre Community Council, and I'll turn the meeting back to you, Chair Austin, to conduct the election of vice chair.
Thank you, Ms. Clerk, for that and taking us through it, and thank you, colleagues, for putting me back right where I sit here. Much appreciated. So now we will have to choose a vice chair. So I would look to council to see if there's interest or nominations. I would say that Councillor Cleary.
This may sound odd, and maybe it's because you've always been available. I don't actually know who our current vice chair is.
Same.
It's Councillor Kent, and she did express that she would be fine with continuing in that role. So the idea of vice chair is a chance, if someone wants to be chair, you can kind of go vice, get a sense of it, and go on. And I'm kind of speaking to Virginia and Laura here, who are new still. If someone was interested, I mean, we don't have to put Councillor Kent back, but I know she was also fine to carry on in that role if no one else was eager to step up.
Well, I'm on our regional community council. I don't even know. I'm on one of them as a co-chair. So I nominate Councillor Kent.
Thank you. There's a nomination for Councillor Kent. Is there a second?
I can second that.
Seconded by Councillor White. Ms. Clerk, where Councillor Kent isn't here, can we still appoint her to this role?
Yes, we can, because there's no requirement that the nominee accept. And you've indicated that she is interested, so I would say that we're good to go.
I'm happy to hear we have the powers to voluntold people. Thank you. So we have a nomination then for Councillor Kent, and we're going with that she accepts. Are there any further nominations? Are there any further nominations? Third and final call. Are there any further nominations? So that would go to Councillor Kent, and I gather, Ms. Clerk, you'd like to have us formally vote on this as well.
Yes, please, Chair Austin.
Okay, question, all in favor? All those opposed? Thank you, that carries unanimously. So we look very much the same as we did for before with this very busy committee. So our next thing would be approval of the minutes from June 25th. Can someone move the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councillor White, second by Councillor Clary. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Thank you, colleagues. Approvals of the additions and deletions. Ms. Clerk.
Yes, Chair Austin. There are no additions or deletions to the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. Would someone like to move the order of business then?
I'll move.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Hinch, second by Councillor Clary. Question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That carries. We have our approved order of business. Business arising out of the minutes, we have none. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare tonight? Seeing none. Motions of reconsideration, we have none. We have no motions of rescission. There is no deferred business. There are no tabled matters. We are not having any hearings. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Ms. Clerk.
Chair Austin, the clerk's office did not receive any correspondence for this meeting. I can also confirm that no petitions were received.
Thank you. Does anyone from council have a petition or anything this evening? Seeing none, we'll carry on. Public participation. Ms. Clerk, has anyone signed up?
Chair Austin, no one signed up for public participation, and I can confirm that the deadline to sign up to participate via Zoom was 4:30 p.m. yesterday.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So then that brings us to the meat and potatoes of why we're here tonight. Oh, well, I should say there are no information items brought forward. So 14.1.1, case 2025-02245, community services use. So this would be a first reading. So we'll go to Eleanor Furlbeck for a presentation. Apologies if I've got that last name wrong.
No, you did great. It's a tricky one.
And the floor is yours.
Thank you. Just make sure I have my PowerPoint up here. All right. Are we able to see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So my name is Eleanor Furlbeck. I'm a planner too, working on the Regional Center Community Planning team. And I'll be providing a presentation summarizing the applicant request, background to this case, and staff recommendation for this planning application. So just a little background. In October 2025, we received a request from FBM Architecture on behalf of the North End Community Health Center to amend the Regional Center land use bylaw. Just for ease and in the interest of time, I'm going to say the LUB, to enable greater flexibility for community health centers in the higher order residential or HR zones. So there's kind of two parts of this request. The applicant asked for staff to consider amending the LUB to create a new land use definition for community health centers and permit them in the HR zones, and also to exempt this new use from parking requirements in those zones. And this request stems from some regulatory challenges encountered by the North End Community Health Center during the permitting process for a 6-story addition to the St. Vincent de Paul Supportive Housing Facility at 2445 Brunswick Street. And a elevation for the proposed project is just shown to the right on this slide. And just a note for clarification, the proposed built form and design of the Community Health Center facility is not subject to consideration by council at this time because it's being evaluated through the as of right permitting process. So during this presentation and this discussion, we're just going to be talking about kind of a broader change that this site kind of brought awareness to and is being requested by the applicant. So to provide a bit of context as to the types of not-for-profit organizations we're talking about when we say community health centers, these are not-for-profit organizations that provide a broad range of on-site and outreach services. They often include primary healthcare services coupled with health promotion, community programming, and social services. They also tend to focus on addressing the social determinants of health, so focusing on improving income, access to housing, education, and access to healthcare in order to prevent illness and promote well-being. They're often community governed and address local needs, including support for marginalized and traditionally underserved populations. So while this isn't a site-specific application, as mentioned before, the site is used to illustrate the ways in which the current regulations are kind of limiting for non-for-profit organizations like the North End Community Health Center, which is located in the HR1 zone. I won't go into this table too much. It is located in the report if you would like a further description of the site, but this slide just kind of provides an idea of the types of existing services and adjacent uses in this area. So to the left of the proposed site and rear are HR1 zoned affordable housing developments, and it's also located on the same block as some other community-based organizations, including Hope Cottage and Adsum House. And a feature of HR zones is that they're typically located within walking or rolling distance to goods, services, and public transportation. And in this case, this site is located between 2 key transit corridors, Barrington Street and Gottingen Street. So community health centers are generally classified as a medical clinic use under the institutional category in the LUB. But the current medical clinic use definition doesn't really include the kind of non-medical social support services that community health centers will often offer. And when we talk about these kind of wraparound or support services, we're talking about programs like housing support, outreach programs, legal services, and community and cultural resources that are provided not-for-profit to the community. So there's currently a gap where no land use definition exists in the LUB that kind of accurately captures the scope of services being provided by these organizations. Again, they're typically considered under somewhat related uses, so medical clinics, shelters, or personal services. And this lack of an accurate definition can potentially present unforeseen barriers to the delivery of services for these organizations and may unintentionally subject them to some unnecessary requirements. So in the context of the subject site, the applicant points to the lack of a clear definition as a barrier for the facility to attain approval for the types of services that they wish to offer. So the 2445 Brunswick Street site is proposed to contain multiple floors of office space. This includes meeting rooms, boardrooms, and administrative spaces within the facility to support the operation of the organization and also offer opportunities for other service providers to co-locate with them, such as, a legal aid clinic on one of the floors. And the floor plan is for the 4th floor here, and you can see that there's a decent amount of office space being proposed. The issue that they've run into is that offices aren't permitted as a main use in the HR1 zone. So as of now, the proposal can't readily be approved because there's currently no use that these non-medical support services can reasonably be considered under. And the second part of this request is to not apply minimum parking requirements to that new use. So the applicant notes that a lot of the clients using community health center services access the site via active transportation or public transit rather than personal vehicles. So the need for, quite a few parking spaces isn't as high as it might be for a regular medical clinic. Surface parking can be challenging to provide due to limited space on small infill lots like the subject site. And the alternative to this is providing underground parking, but this has proven to be a bit too costly and not within the budget for not-for-profits to provide. So under the current regulations, the medical clinic use requires 1 parking space per 300 square meters of floor area, and the subject site requires 13 parking spaces, and their proposal has been reduced to 9 because under Section 433, if enhanced bike parking is provided, then you can cut down on the number of required spaces that needed to be provided. Currently in their proposal, underground parking is included due to the tight lot dimensions on that site to meet the minimum requirements, but the applicant states that the cost would be a significant barrier to the project feasibility if they did have to go through with providing the underground parking. So the secondary municipal planning strategy, I'm going to use another acronym and just say SMPS. It provides the following direction. So these policies just kind of allow us to make decisions around proposed changes to the LUB, the bylaw. So section 1.4.2 directs us to promote pedestrian supportive mixed-use developments that allow safe and convenient access to the services needed in daily lives that are located within walking distance. Policy ED4 directs office uses to be concentrated in the downtown center and corridor designations where frequent transit service is present or planned. And this doesn't mean that office uses aren't permitted in any form in other zones. It's just that the development and clustering of large-scale office uses are discouraged in locations outside of these zones or these designations. Section 2.1 or 2.10 supports improving access to small-scale institutions that support complete communities and facilitate the use of active transportation and public transit by employees and clients. And Section 7.1 states that the municipality should balance parking demand with the needs of other transportation modes by reducing minimum parking space requirements. And staff also considered the objectives of relevant priority plans, including the IMP Halifax's inclusive economic strategy, and the public safety strategy to inform this recommendation. So the SMPS also provides specific policy direction for the HR designation that also is used to guide decisions around what types of land uses should be permitted in this zone and what is considered compatible. So the HR zones are primarily intended to maintain the residential character of an area, but policies HO1 and HO2 enable small-scale compatible commercial and institutional uses to support complete communities. The HR2 zone is slightly more permissive than the HR1 zone, which allows fewer commercial and institutional uses. And permitted commercial uses are restricted to a maximum of 25% floor area in mixed-use residential buildings. And both of these zones permit several institutional uses, and these do not have a maximum floor area restriction. This slide just shows kind of a list of what's already permitted in the HR zones, commercial uses and institutional uses. Of course, more uses like residential uses are also permitted, as they're mainly, these zones are mainly residential, but we're just kind of focusing on the existing commercial and institutional parts of this zone. So the HR zones are a little bit less permissive than other mixed use zones, again, just because their designation is primarily residential. They do permit quite a few minor commercial uses shown in the yellow box. And in terms of institutional uses, both the HR1 and HR2 allow a range, including several uses that not-for-profits might be considered under right now. So medical clinics, shelters, cultural uses, and religious institutions are common boxes, I guess, that not-for-profits have to kind of fit themselves into. And then the asterisks by these uses indicate that no minimum parking spaces are required for that use in the HR zones. But it is worth noting that a lot of these zones, a lot of these uses, including the medical clinic use, don't require minimum parking in other high density mixed use zones, such as the downtown center and corridor zones. The HR zones are a bit more, place a bit more requirements on commercial and institutional uses. So during our conversations with development services staff, we heard that some other not-for-profits have experienced similar challenges when proposing uses that might not fit neatly under any of the existing uses in the LUB. And this kind of lack of clear, inclusive definition has created administrative barriers and can potentially slow down approval processes for not-for-profit projects. And this applies to other mixed-use zones as well, even though these uses are permitted as of right. It's just not super clear for these organizations applying whether their specific services would be allowed because they're not addressed in the bylaw. We also noticed that affordable or supportive housing operators have encountered challenges related to providing on-site wraparound services or office space to support these operations. So that was a consideration that factored into our development of our amendments and new proposed use. So as I mentioned before, commercial uses in the HR zones are limited in scale, but personal service uses and offices are often proposed in conjunction with other uses by not-for-profits. Both zones allow personal service uses up to 25% of the floor area of a mixed-use residential building. And personal service uses are often kind of used in applications by not-for-profits because the definition includes warming and cooling centers, food banks, soup kitchens, and drop-in centers. Offices are not permitted in the HR1 zone. They are permitted in the HR2 zone, but they're subject to that 25% floor area cap. Not-for-profits often require office space to provide services like legal aid, housing services, tax assistance, etc. Or they might just generally require space to accommodate the administrative functions of their organization. And renting, an additional office space outside of the community that they serve just might not be an option. I'll also mention that office uses are only permitted in the INS zone through the internal conversion of a landmark building, so they're somewhat limited in the INS zone as well. And then shared housing and shelter uses, they're permitted quite broadly across mixed-use zones, including the HR and INS zones. So looking at these all together, staff recommend that these kind of supporting uses be included in the new use definition, just to reduce the complexity of applications and provide greater certainty for not-for-profit organizations when they, come in to apply for an occupancy permit or a building permit. So heading into our proposed changes, we recommend adding a community services use to the LUB. And the proposed definition would be read as follows. So community services use means premises owned or operated by a not-for-profit organization where healthcare services, social services, and or housing are provided, and may include a shared housing use, shelter use, or accessory uses related to the services provided, such as an office use or a personal service use. So as indicated by this definition, this use would be intended to be limited to premises owned or operated by not-for-profit organizations. And I'll also note that that is a term already defined in the LUB, so we're not putting our development officers into a gray area when they go to approve these applications. And to qualify for this use, not-for-profit organization has to provide at least one of the three main uses. So healthcare services, social services, or housing can be a combination of multiple of those. Shared housing and shelter uses are already broadly permitted and are also included in this definition, just to, again, enhance flexibility for organizations that might wish to provide a combination of services, and just to provide that certainty that it would be permitted as a component. And then the last kind of two sentences of this, other uses related to the services provided, such as office space and personal services, may be provided on site as accessory uses. So that ensures that if, for example, offices aren't permitted as a main use in a zone, like the HR1 zone, they won't be the dominant use of the building. They'll still remain compatible and respectful to the surrounding neighborhood. And it's just to ensure that, that office space is going to be used to further the support of that not-for-profit organization or further support the residents of the community. So these are the zones that we are proposing this new use be permitted in. And the activities described in the definition in the last slide, most of those are already permitted as of right in the downtown center and corridor zones. So these big ones here. And as I mentioned before, there's not really a specific use that these, social services or community services fall under. So we want to ensure that we're enabling it in these zones, not just the HR zones, just to maintain the consistency of the center plan framework and to enable, and again, that greater certainty for not-for-profits. We also recommend limiting the office and personal service accessory uses to 25% of the total building floor area, just to keep in line with what is already permitted. And that would just apply to the HR1 and HR2 zones. Again, right now, office uses aren't permitted in the HR1 zone, but staff think that it's appropriate to enable a little accessory office space just to support the operations of these organizations. And then lastly down here, the community services use would be permitted as of right in the INS zone, the institutional zone, but to encourage the retention of landmark building sites, we also recommend allowing it to be permitted through internal conversion of these designated landmark buildings. So just following the regular requirements for that. There's several other uses and commercial uses and institutional uses that would be permitted on landmark building sites. So this is just adding this new use to the list. We also recommend adding the community services use to the list of uses permitted on the, oh, sorry guys, I think I skipped forward one. There we go. So this is just adding the community service use and institutional uses generally to the list of permitted ground floor uses on pedestrian-oriented commercial streets, and as well enabling institutional uses generally on the ground floor of multi-unit dwellings in the downtown center corridor and HR zones. And this would just allow community services as well as other important institutional uses, so daycares and medical clinics, for example, to be on the ground level and oriented towards the street line. So we're also finally in favor of exempting the proposed new use, the community services use, from minimum parking requirements. So providing minimum parking spaces currently isn't required for several other similar uses like shelters, offices, and personal services in any zone, including the HR zones. So this, we believe, wouldn't be too big of a step away from that direction. Exempting this use from parking requirements also represents an opportunity to support our policy objectives towards encouraging active transportation and transit opportunities. And that it would also allow organizations to determine the number of parking spaces that will be required based on the needs of the communities that they serve. So instead of us kind of applying a minimum and forcing them to comply with that, they can decide how much they think is appropriate. And I'll also note that the municipal transportation demand management staff were consulted on this change and indicated support for this proposed direction. Okay, so we've reviewed the proposed changes in relation to relevant policy criteria, and we do advise that the proposal is reasonably consistent with the intent of the SNPS. The proposed changes would support several policy objectives, such as enhancing access to community-based resources that support resident well-being and safety, reducing barriers to affordable housing with wraparound services, simplifying permit approval processes by streamlining regulation, promoting pedestrian-oriented mixed-use communities, and encouraging sustainable active modes of transportation. So we're currently at the first reading stage of these proposed amendments. The next steps would be to hold a public hearing, and if approved, then the process would move into a 14-day appeal period before the changes can be adopted. The level of engagement was consultation, and that was achieved through providing information and seeking comments through the HRL website. No comments were received via email or phone. The webpage received 36 views with an average engagement time of 1.5 minutes. And this process is consistent with the requirements described in Clause 6A of the Public Participation Administrative Order. And the HRM website will be updated to indicate notice of the public hearing should council wish to further consider these amendments. So moving into the formal recommendation, it's recommended that Regional Center Community Council give first reading to consider the proposed amendments to the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw as set out in Attachment A and schedule a public hearing, and adopt the amendments to the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw as set out in Attachment A. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your time, members of council, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eleanor, for that comprehensive presentation. I wonder if there's any questions or if someone would like to put the motion on the floor. I think this may be Councillor Hinch, given that it's your area that has sparked this, if you wouldn't mind.
Give me a sec. Let me find the motion. Oh, I had
Maybe
it.
Eleanor, you're still on the screen with the presentation.
Oh,
Maybe
yeah, I can stop
one
sharing.
for...
Can you do that?
Oh, sorry.
I was saying, I got to say, if you go back one slide, then Councillor Hinch can just read it off the screen.
All right. Sorry, guys, I have too many tabs open. All right, there we go.
So I
First- the first
move,
paragraph.
it is recommended that Regional Center Community Council give first reading to consider the proposed amendment to the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw as set out in Attachment A and schedule a public hearing and adopt the amendment
No,
to
no,
region.
we stop right there, right,
Okay,
Ms. Clark?
okay.
Because that
That is
comes
correct,
next.
Chair, yes.
Yeah.
Stop at scheduling the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, seconded, moved by Councillor Hinch and second by Councillor Cleary. Anything on this, Councillor Hinch?
So I was a little bit confused in the beginning because they kept referencing the community health center quite a bit. Eleanor, are we talking about, so in the first couple of slides, are we talking about the Oz? Because that's the new facility that's already down there?
Yeah, so I can go back to I think there's a site plan. Not sure if I can zoom in.
Because what I was confused about, I said, well, is the health center looking to move out of the government building, or?
Yes, so currently they have a development permit in for this new facility. I am not sure if they will be retaining their existing location and this is just another facility. I think that would probably be a question for a member of that team. I do know that they are planning to take over operations of Ozanam Place. So it would kind of be like and it would be the same main building. So if you can see, I know it's really small. There's a tiny little connection to that building in behind the community health center building. So I think the idea is to kind of offer services to residents in the SSVP supportive housing building, and then also just general community members as well.
Okay. All right. That was all I had for questions, to be honest with you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next on the list, hand up would be Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Eleanor and staff for bringing this forward. This is one of those things. So when we adopted the center plan, we knew there would be things that pop up over the next number of years that we just didn't account for. And, at the time, the housing crisis was really about, well, we just need more units. And then, of course, once we actually hit the housing and especially the homelessness crisis that we're in now, the main folks that are proving very hard to house are those that need wraparound services. And it's very difficult to provide them with the space if you can't provide them with the services in the space. And so I think this is very timely, and I'm glad the St. Vincent de Paul Society and the North End Health Clinic are looking at this. The need is there, and it's absolutely essential that these kind of office uses and care uses and other things go around with the housing that they're providing. And so I'm happy to support this and bring this to a public hearing and see where we go from there. But thank you to you, Eleanor, and all the staff who worked on this. As the chair said, it was a very comprehensive presentation. And if you read through the report, it's obviously a very thorough look at all the things we're doing and aren't doing and what we need to do to make this a reality. So good job for you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see anyone else. Would anyone object if I just ask one question from here?
Sure. Go ahead.
I'm not seeing any problems out there. So just wondering, Eleanor, the list of zones that this new use would apply to is pretty comprehensive for all the higher density zoning that we have. The one that I didn't see on the list is the future growth nodes, which of course come in all different shapes and sizes. And I'm wondering if staff gave any consideration as to whether or not this should be something that's allowed in the future growth nodes while they proceed through further planning.
Yeah, I think that will be something that we will have to take into consideration as planning work goes on in these CDD zones. Yeah, I feel like it will probably depend on the nature of the uses that end up being located in those CDD zones. So if it is kind of like a similar zoning framework where it's, you know, higher density and mixed use, such as the downtown or center zones, I think that that's something that we would definitely consider permitting. If it's mainly low-rise residential, I think maybe that's something that we would consider not implementing this use in. As you can see, you know, the ER zones aren't on here. So I think it'll just depend on the nature of the, you know, sites and the planning that goes on in the CDD zones. But we'll certainly, I think, keep in communication with planners working on those files as those planning processes progress. Josh, did you have anything to add to that?
No, not much. I mean, those sites are basically largely going through development agreement. All the new development agreements are kind of pointing back to the land use bylaw as amended from time to time anyways. So it's kind of de facto just going to be a permitted use where, you know, the zoning is kind of similar if it's based on an HR or core zone. So yeah, it's something that will be enabled as those go through the process.
Thank you, Josh. Mike, I'm not gonna like suggest a change here or anything on the fly, right? Because I think this is important stuff that needs to carry forward. I think it's just worth keeping in mind that some of the future growth nodes have existing buildings and current usage is going on, and some of them are quite mixed. Like, you know, I think about like Dartmouth Cove, right, for example. Some of these sort of places, they're not all owned by a single landowner starting from scratch. So under the current changes, if you wanted to operate something like this in a location like that, you'd still have the same problem that they currently face since it's not included. Oh, I think I've sparked Councillor Cleary. We'll go to him.
Well, just to follow up on that sort of question, when I look at least on my side, when I look at the future growth nodes around like Strawberry Hill, the West End Mall, the Manulife building and that sort of stuff on Joe Howe. I don't know, I forget now when we did this. Did we kind of carry forward the current zoning that comes with that from the previous Halifax Peninsula? And, you know, you look at the old Dartmouth plans, or so for example, you know, I look at the West End Mall, which is now commercial. They already have health clinic. Dalhousie Family Medicine is in there. ISANS is in there. You know, so Strawberry Hill is industrial. Would you be able to do this in one of those zones now anyway? I just trying to get a sense of, most of these wouldn't be low-rise residential. Most of them are industrial, commercial, or you know, already mixed use, at least the ones that I'm familiar with.
I think it would probably
answer to that readily. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I don't have the answer just because I'm not super familiar with the FGN plans going on right now. That's certainly something that we could discuss with the planners working on that, though, if you wanted us to follow up with you on it.
Yeah, like Councillor Austin, I'm not willing to stop this now, but I think that's worth digging into just to see if in some of those areas there are barriers to something like this setting up there. And if there are, then maybe we just tack that on and do a second phase, if you will, of adding this zone. But it's kind of hard to do that when they need master plans before you can actually do. Anyway, I'll let the planners work that one out. But it's a great thing, I think, that the chair raises.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep these questions in mind going forward, and hopefully we can, you know, sit down with some of the FGN and strategic growth planners and see what's possible.
Josh, were you? It looked like you were almost going to chime in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll come back with maybe at the public hearing and just confirm, but just looking at it, like I think the CDT, the Comprehensive Development District 2 zone, which is kind of the as of right zoning in a lot of these areas, just, punts back to the SEN 2 zone for permitted uses. So that, that zone obviously permits a lot of these things already as of right. And as we're updating the SEN 2 zoning list with this new use, I think it might be okay, but we'll take this away and come back with maybe a firm answer on that.
Awesome. This has been a particularly fruitful first reading, which is not always the case. So thank you very much for that. Not seeing anybody else. If we're ready, question, folks.
Question.
Questions been called by the area councillor. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, so we will see that in next month for a public hearing. Or I guess would that be January, Ms. Clerk?
Actually, our next meeting is December 10th. So the public hearing's going to be scheduled for that meeting.
So we will have that fits into the timelines of notice and everything. This will happen on the 10th. Okay.
I believe so.
Wonderful. Yeah. Well, then we'll see it before the end of the year then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, staff. So next item on our list is our 2026 meeting schedule, which is always a busy one for this committee because, we're always meeting every month this bunch. So Councillor Cleary.
Happy to put that on the floor. That Regional Center Community Council approved the proposed 2026 Regional Center Community Council meeting schedule as outlined in the staff memorandum.
Second.
Second by Councillor Hinch. Councillor Cleary.
I don't see anything initially when I look at the dates that are problematic. I guess we'll find out if we use them all like we normally do.
Indeed. Councillor White, I believe you've got your hand up and I think you have a suggested change.
Yes, I was going to suggest a change that we go to April 15th rather than the 22nd because I noticed that's the volunteer awards night.
Well caught. Folks would you like it? You're proposing that as a motion then? So would someone like to second that?
I can second that.
Second by Councillor Hinch. Ms. Clerk, is there any concerns from the clerk's department about moving that date?
Councillor White had raised this with me earlier today, and I checked there are no other border committee meetings scheduled that day, so there should be no conflicts on April 15th.
Awesome. Okay. I don't see any hands up, so question on the amendment? Question. All in favor?
Aye.
That carries. So we've changed that date. Thank you, Councillor White, for being very on the ball there. Anything else? Not seeing anything. So perhaps we can have the question on the main motion then. Question has been called. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That carries. So our meeting schedule is set. Thank you, Council. Motions, we have none. There are no in-camera items. We have no added items. Notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion tonight? No. Okay. So then that brings us to the date of our next meeting, which we will definitely actually be meeting on December 10th, since we will have that public hearing. So I would take a motion to adjourn at this time.
Adjourn.
Moved by Councillor Cleary.